I'm disassembling this 3/8 of an inch ratchet. Disassembly and assembly the head, but before you start, look through the video. It can be very difficult or even impossible to put it back in place. Up to you to take the risk. What you really need to use as tools, it's a nose circlip opening pliers. We have a circlip right there, and you need to use it in the closing position. So you need to press down to close it, not to open it. Maybe use a quality one, but it's very difficult even to remove that circlip. Also, you need to use very small flat Chinese screwdriver. You will see in a moment, and maybe something like this to grab a few parts, and maybe a flat screwdriver. Let's just start. First, it has this circlip that you actually need to close to remove from there. I found that very difficult because the circlip sits against this plate and you can just not you cannot grab it. Let's see, I apologize for details. It is very difficult to insert fully the pliers because the circlip sits against plate, so you cannot really grab it properly, especially also if you have grease. What I did is I did compress it a little bit with the pliers, just a little bit, and then when it did clear on this end, it did clear a little bit, I did insert the flat screwdriver right there. I did capture it like this and lift it from there. It's difficult to remove from there. Maybe you will not even be able to do it. So this is the circlip, can go both ways, doesn't matter. And then we have this retaining plate. We just lift it from there. It's a thin plate. It can go both ways too. So this one you can put it this way, doesn't matter. Now inside we do have here this piece, and we do have the switch part. The silver one is the switch part, and then we have two whatever you call them, two pieces with splines. There's two of them. Let's just put some order here. Let's lift this one. There's no bearing balls, so this is your splines and release switch. You may want to put a droplet of engine oil here on the ball. It gets stuck sometimes. Now let's look inside. This is the important part. So we do have one piece at the top. Let me see how to film this because these are tiny. One top piece. This is the top one. I explain in a moment how to put it back in place. This is the bottom one, silver. And then right there inside, let's see if I can give you some light. You will find this is the switch part, so you can rotate it. If you put the switch at the center, you'll find there is two pins. I'll show you in detail because perhaps you cannot see from here. You can remove them from there. So this is one pin. Actually there are three of those. Right now I'm removing two of them. They do have they are hollow, and there is a spring inside. So the spring gets right into the cylinder of this pin, and the pin has a tip. All three pins are the same, so don't bother, don't worry if you mix them up. I'll show you in a moment how it sits in there, because from this angle it's not possible, so careful not to lose the springs. So the spring is really just inset in there, either end, it doesn't matter. This is one, two, the two pieces. I'll show in a moment how they sit in there. And then you want to remove the switch part. There is actually a third pin here that it's pushing against the switch. So if you want to remove it from the top, this pin behind it that you cannot see now, it's kind of keeping it in place. So what you want to do is just rotate it like this a little bit, the switch itself. So just push here downwards a little bit, oops, like this. So basically the third pin is right here behind, you'll see it in a moment. Right now you want to remove the switch from the top, but that pin, it's kind of keep it in place. Perhaps you can see the pin. It depends if it's pushing too much, maybe you are going to just wiggle it, wiggle the screw, the switch a little bit. But at some point, just keep removing it, and then when it's coming to top, just rotate it like this. So rotate it like this to free it from there. That's how it comes up. There's nothing to see for now, but there is this third pin right there. So you can tell it was pushing against the switch, this one. It's difficult to grab, but actually you don't really need to remove it from there. This is the pin, the spring stays in there for some reason, and this is the spring. The springs are all the same length, pins are all the same length, no worries to mix them up. Okay, so this is how it sits inside. This is the switch, this is the top of the switch, and it has two holes. And these are the holes where the two pins, the first two ones, sit. First you insert the spring, and you kind of push it a little bit inside, not too much, so it's springy. And that's the second pin. So this is how these two guys stay inside, and then there's the third one. The third one actually is pushing behind the switch. Now the two parts here, I'm showing you how they stay in there, and then the most important part is going to be how to mysteriously put these things back in place, because perhaps this is one of the reasons you are watching this video. Now the two pins are different. The bottom pin, mine, does the camera really show? This one is silver, and it's kind of, it's not thicker, but it's different in a way. If you look behind it, this is where those, into that groove, this is where those pins are pushing against. So the pin kind of moves inside there, and it's pushing at that point. The bottom piece, it's symmetrical, so it doesn't matter. You can put it like this or like that. I don't think there is a difference, at least I couldn't see. And you are going always to put it to match the splines on the other component. So just remember that detail. So this is the bottom one. When I say bottom, it means bottom as it sits like this. So with the face down, that's the bottom one, sits at the bottom when it's open like this. The top one, it's not symmetrical, and it has from behind, let's see how to keep this in hand so you can see the point. Behind it has a notch at the top, so this is the top. When you put it into this opening from the top down, this notch here will, the camera will perhaps let's see if I can get the camera to focus. No, anyhow, so this notch here sits at the top, and that's important. Otherwise it's just like the other one. And maybe if I can toss this away, the camera will focus on me. The pin, whoops, you see there is a little bit of work here. That's why the video is too long. It's so long. So the pin, it's pushing inside this groove as well. Maybe the camera focus. I don't know how to ask the camera for focusing, but no, it's a camera that has a mind on its own. But anyhow, you notice that kind of notch at the top. That is important because when you see this, when you put these things back on against this switch, basically the two parts stay like this, one on top of each other. Okay, finally camera focused. But so you notice perhaps the top piece has kind of a, is just cut at the top. It's like it has an, I call that a groove, notch, whatever. It has that cut. That stays at the top because that's how it's going to fit onto the switch. Because, let's see, that's how it fits onto the switch. And you just look past the camera. Basically, when you put the two parts together, whoops, it's tiny pieces. When you put the two parts together, they will sit like this, but it's important that the groove on the top piece sits at the top of it. Otherwise, they are not going to fit into the switch when it moves like this. You cannot really see it from this angle, that groove, but it definitely sits at the top. So it's important. All right, let's put this back in place. That's the point. Hopefully you watch the video and take your own decision. I can tell you that I wasn't sure I can put this back in place. I do use this thing. It's very useful because if you want, maybe you can try with the thin nose pliers to position them, but the space is too small here. So, and if you want to put those pins back in place with your fingers, not sure what your record, but you are going to spend some time. So let's just grab this thing, put it. This is the one behind the switch. Again, it could be any one of the three ones. All physical are the same. So bear with me. I'm not Albert Einstein, so I'm doing this live for you. Okay, this sits in there a bit like this. Now I'm going to place the switch the same way I did remove it. So again, a rotation like this. So this is the other side of the ratchet. Hold on a second. So it's going to enter with this bump here first. So at an angle a little bit, then it stops because of that pin. So now I need to push back that pin. Perhaps I'm going to use a flat screwdriver. I will keep that pin back in place into its hole, and I'm going to push the switch to go past the pin. So now the pin is captured behind the switch. So this is the first position. The switch is all the way in. At this point, it's a very useful tool. At this point, I'm going to place these two pins. You know, I'm doing these videos and I'm filming with a cell phone, and I need to usually I would check the cell phone screen, but that's difficult to figure out the distances. That's why sometimes I'm not very handy. This is the second pin. You can interchange them again. So they kind of stay in there, not all the way in, kind of 1 or 2 millimeter stand out from their holes. Now we need to, this one becomes critical at this point. We need to place the two parts for one last time. That's how they stay. The top part has the kind of cut behind it that stays at the top. I'm going to place the bottom one, which again could be either way, but remember the position it goes to fit the other piece. So I'm going to just place it at the bottom. And what's important is at this point is that, like I was mentioning, perhaps put the switch at the center, because you want this pin, or the bottom pin actually, to fit into this groove, into this kind of square cut which you have on both sides, on both pieces. So both of them have this square cut. That pin, when you put this piece back down, make sure the pin goes inside here. It doesn't matter left or right, but inside that cut. So first is this piece that's symmetrical, that goes at the bottom. See how I'm placing it, and I will put the piece at the center, and the pins are going to be at the center too, so I know this way the pin is going to match that square cut. You can look just at the top pin, the bottom pin is going to be at the same position. So see, it moves a bit. All right, so make sure pins match that square cut. This is the top piece that for one last time has that kind of weird cut that says at the top. Try to, I don't know how handy you are, but try to kind of put them both to stay there. And you see that top cut is at the top, pin it's inside the squares on both sides. Now here's the trick part that I'm not sure I will manage to do it, oops, on the first try, so that may extend the video a little bit. At this point I will try to put the switch at the center, and I'm going to keep with the screwdriver, which is very thin and quite strong. That's, you need the thinnest piece of whatever you can find, but it has to be quite strong. Just a metal wire, I don't know if it's going to work. Let's just try with the metal wire. This one, it's kind of difficult to bend, so maybe it's going to work. I'm going to place it in front of the two pieces, and I'm going to push the pieces against the switch to fully compress the two pins, which are springy. So I need to really move the two pieces and keep them against the switch. Notice that again the switch is in full normal position, this one, so it's not being pushed back by the pin behind, right? Let's see if I can do it. I need to do this, and at the same time I need to film it and remember how to put this back correctly in place. So if I keep them in my hand, it doesn't matter if the switch turns to one side. The important part is the pins are fully compressed but against the square part. And let's try, I'm keeping at this point with the wire both pieces, the bottom one and the top one. Maybe you don't see it that well, and when I keep them fully compressed, fully against the, you can call that switch, I'll try to insert this piece. This is the very difficult part. Actually the top, I think it went past. At this point I think it did already engage with the top piece, but perhaps not yet with the bottom one. Oops, that's just my camera. So let's just see how low it goes. And the wire is still captured in between, and that's why the wire has to be really thin, or the screwdriver, because there is a little bit of play in between this guy and this guy, just because it compresses those pins, but there's not a lot of play. So right now I'll keep it like this. It seems that these two are already engaged in the splines, at least a little bit. The bottom one is not yet, because this guy hasn't gone yet all the way to the bottom. So right now I'm turning. This one should stay in place, but I keep my finger here. I keep the big piece with my finger with a bit of pressure so it doesn't fall from there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my screwdriver and I'm going to figure out where the bottom piece is, the small bottom piece with splines here, which is not yet fully, well, it's mostly fully compressed, but I want to push it even more so to allow this guy to come out all the way, to allow to basically engage the splines from this one with the splines with the bottom piece. So I'm trying to get where the bottom piece is, and I'm going to push like this on the small bottom piece, the first one that I did insert. At the same time, I'm pushing with my finger against this one upwards. I try to push it upwards. See if I'm lucky, because you have no visual. Not sure. Let's just keep it like this, and I'm just going to remove the wire at this point. but you hope that the bottom piece here has already engaged into the splines of this one. Let's just try to push it one more time. Oops. Okay. Funny, right? Yes, I don't want to repeat this. So I guess the piece underneath this one had already engaged a little bit on the spline of the big piece. So my wire was pushing the bottom piece enough to engage with the splines of this one. The top one had already engaged, but I didn't know if the bottom one had already had also engaged. It seems it did. It seems indeed it did, because this one had come out and the top, or come to the top all the way. If you cannot bring this one to the top, this is the normal position, this is just the normal how it sits. If you cannot bring this one all the way to the top like this, is because the other small piece here, it's not engaged with the splines, and that's the whole trick, that's the whole problem. I don't know, I guess the video does show the point, but you obviously cannot get a visual on the other small piece inside. That's the whole point, is to keep it in place, this one and the piece underneath, to keep them in place just enough to engage with the splines on the big part here. And give you idea, sometimes you need to push it like this, sometimes you may need to kind of rotate this one a little bit, but it's tricky, it may work or may not work, right? That's the whole story here. There's nothing else to say, just put that plate either way here and compress the circlip and just engage it in the grooves, and you call it a day. You want to lubricate this thing inside, clean it. Well, I did this because I had another video about this ratchet. Was just a video where I was checking the components inside. To me, this is a weak ratchet. It's not a strong. Well, it's not a weak like a cheap Chinese one, but it's just the really bottom of the quality. It's not a ratchet on which I would force. Force maybe, I don't know, not force like crazy, just force. I will just be really gentle with this ratchet. But again, I did a video when I was where I did remove the internals, but I didn't show how to put them back in place, and the people were complaining in that video saying that it's why you didn't show how to put this thing back in place. So that's the reason I'm doing this 25 almost video long. Try it on your own if you want, but I guess you understand that there is a risk. You may not be able to fit that bottom tiny piece to bring this guy all the way up to the top and put it correctly back in place. Just be aware of that detail. And again, this spring, I found it really annoying to compress completely and just pop it up from there. That trick maybe is going to help you. Just compress it a little bit and just grab it with the pliers, with the screwdriver, and pop it from there. Maybe you are going to get to it. Okay, thanks for watching, and check my other links that I'll put in the end of this video.